All right, good afternoon. We'll go ahead and call to order the regular meeting for the City of Murfreesboro Board of Zoning Appeals for May 27, 2015. First item on the agenda is consideration of minutes from our regular meeting of April 22nd, and those minutes are included with our agenda materials. Any changes to those minutes? All right, those minutes will stand approved then as presented, and we'll start with some new business. Variance requests. First one is application Z15029 by Mr. Mark Baker. He's requesting a 6.5-foot variance from the zoning ordinance that requires a minimum 25-foot rear yard setback. And this is for property in a residential multifamily RM16 zone at 631 East Street. All right, Mr. Lewis, if you'd review that application for us, please.
Yes, Chairman Rogers. Excuse me. This property is located on the west side of East Street. It's about midway between Greenland Drive and Ewing Boulevard, as shown on the attached maps you have in your agenda package. It's zoned residential multifamily, RM16, and a house was recently demolished on the property due to its unsalvageable condition, and the applicant wants to rebuild a new house, single-family dwelling on the lot, which will be used for rental property. The zoning in this classification has a 25-foot rear setback in the RM16 district, and he wants to build a 1,728 square foot house on the lot. In order to do so, a portion of the rear of the house is encroaching into the 25-foot rear setback, as you can see on your attachments. The rear property line is angled in such a way that the house is not able to be squared up with the front of the front property line. And the house, in order to build a house of this size and significantly change the floor plans, he would have to, he's going to require a variance. Approval of the variance will require the new structure to be squared up to match the existing front of the property on East Street. Realigning the house with the rear of the property would cause it to be out of line with the front of the property, and it would also cause it to be encroaching into the front setback. So the variance request, the waiver is from the minimum 25-foot rear setback as referenced in the zoning ordinance. The applicant is requesting a 6.5-foot variance from the rear left corner of the property in order to accommodate this encroachment. Mr. Baker is in the audience to answer any questions you may have. One of the conditions that after reviewing the property, taking pictures, the staff recommends that if the board does approve this variance request, that he begin cutting the grass on the property to conform to the minimum standards that we have in the city. It's a little bit high right now, so it needs to be cleaned up. I'll be able to answer any questions you might have, and like I say, the applicants in the audience as well.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Any questions for Mr. Lewis?
What's the front setback line? Is that 30 feet?
In RM16, I think it is.
Thank you.
It's on the yeah.
And the grass ordinance is one that's in effect regardless of what we do with this application,
right.
Correct?
Right.
Okay. And this is a proposed single-family dwelling?
They're wanting to build a new single-family dwelling on the lot.
All right. All right, Mr. Baker, anything you'd like to add to the application? All right. At this time, we'll conduct a public hearing. Anyone present wishing to speak for or against the application, if you would, please come forward. Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed. Open the floor for further discussions or motion.
If there's no discussion, I'll make a motion that we approve the application subject to staff comments.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that application has been approved. All right, next we'll consider application Z15030 by Mr. Jason LaForte. He's requesting 8-foot and a 5-foot variance from the Murfreesboro zoning ordinance, which requires a minimum 30-foot rear yard setback in a residential single-family RS15 zone and this is for property located at 3437 Autumn Oaks Court. All right, Mr. Lewis.
Yes, Chairman Rogers. This property is located at the end of Autumn Oaks Court, which is a cul-de-sac, and it's located in the Oakley subdivision. Excuse me. The house was constructed in 2000, and the applicants have lived there for the past 4 years. They've been planning on making improvements to the outdoor living area at the rear of the house by adding a patio with a pergola and replacing the existing wooden deck with a covered screened-in porch and an outdoor fireplace. At the time they purchased the property, they were unaware of, they were made aware of an underground drainage easement along the rear of the property, but they weren't exactly sure of its exact location. SEC surveyed the property and found not only the exact location of the easement, but during the survey they found portions of the house and the deck were encroaching into the 30-foot rear setback. It appears that the encroachments were never caught during the construction inspections. The lot, which is shown in the attached survey, is irregularly shaped, which sometimes causes difficulties when the layout occurs. The applicants are requesting an 8-foot variance from the required 30-foot rear setback for the proposed covered screened-in porch and outdoor fireplace. And then, in addition to that, they would like a 5-foot variance from the required 30-foot rear setback for the existing portion of the house, which is currently encroaching into the rear setback. The applicants, they want to clean up this issue, and they were unaware at the time when they bought the house of all this. So, in addition, they would like to improve the value and the look of their house by upgrading the quality and the functionality of their backyard outdoor living space. And they need approval from the BZA in order to do so. A copy of the survey, the building plans, and photographs of the property are included in the agenda package, and I can review them if we can pull up the screen. This is the rear of the property, and you can see the deck is on the left-hand side, and the existing living space is in the center of the property, or the photograph. This is the look from, this is the outdoor deck. There's another angle of the outdoor deck. And this shot, I may have to get some help with the applicant. You can see where the grass is a little bit higher on one side. I'm not sure if he's just finished mowing the yard or is this actually the property line where he mows. But this is the backyard of his property. And these are some photographs that the applicant brought in addition with his application. The applicant's in the audience, and he'll be able to answer any questions you might have, and I'll be available as well.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Questions for Mr. Lewis?
Is the proposed addition going to be the same footprint as the current deck?
I believe it is, but if you, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I was told yes.
Hello, good afternoon. Jason Ford, homeowner. So yes, it is going to be an existing footprint, just merely going from a pressure-treated wooden deck to a covered screen porch, which is a more substantial and better-looking space. The other thing I would add to Mr. Lewis's comments are where the grass was mowed is actually the property line. So it is an irregular shape, and it gets smaller on the side of the property with the deck. Another thing I would add is the back of our property line is the city-county line. So by doing this, we're not impacting anybody in the city, nobody in the current subdivision, and the homes in the county behind us are several hundred feet away. So we ask for your approval to upgrade our home. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. LaForte. Well, I got one question. What's a pergola?
A wooden, instead of a solid roof, it's
a structure that you put over decks or patios that you can intermingle with vines and stuff. It's not doesn't have a roof per se. It's
Just wood,
It's basically an overhead
slats.
structure to provide shading and a little more privacy on top of the patio.
Thank you for asking that, because I wanted to. I didn't know it, and I said no.
Sounds nice. I think I need a pergola. All right, at this time, we'll conduct a public hearing. Anyone present wishing to speak for or against the application, if you would, please come forward. All right, seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for further discussions or motion.
If no further questions, I'll make a motion to approve the application.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Mr. LaForte, that application has been approved. Thank you. All right, we'll next consider application Z15031 by Mr. Timothy Turner of T-Square Engineering. He's representing McDonald's Corporation, and he's requesting the following variances from the City of Murfreesboro zoning ordinance, which states that a planting yard shall be uniform width of 8 feet on a front planting yard and 5 feet on other planting yards where the site is between 1 and 2 acres in a heavy industrial zone. We're speaking of property located at 2485 South Church Street. First variance request is a variance of 6 feet from the required 8-foot front planting yard. And variance number 2 is a request for a 3-foot variance from the required 5-foot side planting yard. All right, Mr. Lewis.
Yes, Chairman Rogers. This property is located on the east side of South Church Street between I-24 and Butler Drive. The applicant is proposing to add a second drive-through lane, which is going to require the relocation of the dumpster pad on the site. The City of Murfreesboro also has asked for the removal of 5 parking spaces that are located between the restaurant and Butler Drive, which is you'll be able to see on your attached site plan. The current access driveway onto Butler Drive from the restaurant was designed as a one-way access, not a two-way access drive. The removal of the parking spaces from that driveway will provide the restaurant with better circulation and less congestion. In order to accommodate the additional drive-through lane and relocate the dumpster, the planting yards will have to be reduced along the front of the property and along both sides of the property. A 6-foot variance from the required 8-foot front planting yard is being requested, and a 3-foot variance from the required 5-foot side from the required side to 5-foot planting yard is also being requested. The parking spaces that will be removed from the access drive onto Butler will be relocated in front of the restaurant and to the rear of the restaurant as shown on your site plan. A copy of the site plan is included in your agenda package along with the landscaping plan, and photographs of the property are included in your agenda package for review. The applicants are in attendance at the audience and will be able to answer any questions you may have, and I'll be able to answer them as well.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lewis. Questions for Mr. Lewis? All right. Mr. Turner, anything you'd like to add to the application? Okay. All right. At this time, we'll conduct a public hearing. Anyone present wishing to speak for or against the application, if you would, please come forward. And seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed. Open the floor for further discussions or motion. And I guess we need to take two votes on this. So we'll address variance number 1, request the 6-foot variance from the required 8-foot front planting yard.
If there's no discussion, I'll make a motion to approve variance number 1, the 6-foot front planting yard.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Now consider variance request number 2 for the 3-foot variance from the required 5-foot side planting yard.
I move to approve the variance number 2, the 3-foot variance.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Mr. Turner, that application has been approved. All right, we'll now move on to application Z15032. This is by Mr. Clyde Roundtree of Huddleston Steel Engineering, representing the Slim Chickens restaurant, and he's requesting a variance from the City of Murfreesboro zoning ordinance, which states minimum space between parking and/or access drives and adjacent property shall be 15 feet on lots of 1.5 acres or more, and 10 feet on lots of less than 1.5 acres in a commercial highway zone. And this property is located at 225 North Thompson Lane. And so we have, again, two specific variance requests. One is a variance of 2.5 feet from the required 10 feet between access drives, and the other variance of 5 feet from the required 15 feet between access drives. All right. Mr. Lewis, tell us about that one.
This property is located on the west side of North Thompson Lane. Adjacent on the south side is the new Burger King restaurant, which is slated for construction. The variance requests have come as a result of the City Engineering Department's desire for a better alignment with the driveway across North Thompson Lane. The applicant is requesting variances from the zoning ordinance, Section 24, which states the minimum spacing between parking and/or access drives and adjacent property shall be 15 feet on lots of 1.5 acres or more, and 10 feet on lots that are less than 1.5 acres. And the property where the restaurant's located is a portion of tax map 92, parcel 27.03, which is approximately 4.8 acres. The site for the restaurant is 0.92 acres and will be platted before the restaurant opens. A private drive will also be used for access by the restaurant, but will remain part of the larger tract, the larger 4.8 acres. And you can see that in your agenda package on the site plan. The variance requests pertain to the minimum space between parking and/or access drives and adjacent property. 2.5 feet from the required 10 feet is requested from the access drive and restaurant site property, which is provided on the site plan as 7.5 feet. Since the access drive is remaining with the larger portion of the property, the 4.8 acres, another variance of 5 feet will be required from the required 15 feet, and is being requested from the access drive to the property, which is provided on the site plan as 10 feet. The applicant has worked with the staff by moving the dumpster to its current location and rearranging the queuing spaces for the drive-through and shifting the parking lot to meet the zoning ordinance requirements. These two variances that we're looking at today, they're all that remain in order to meet the zoning ordinance requirements. The applicant states in his letter to the BZA that the development team and the city has worked to properly align the access points onto North Thompson Lane, which is a 5-lane major arterial roadway, while still keeping development options open for the remaining acreage on the larger tract. The difficulty has been gaining the best road alignment for North Thompson Lane. And these variances are requested due to the amount of frontage available on the site in relationship to the site depth of the site. A copy of the site plan and photographs of the property are included in your agenda package, and I just want to review if we can see the screen here. This is the site location. The larger tract is the address 225 North Thompson Lane. You're looking at the property from North Thompson Lane at the larger tract. This is the site plan. I'll be able to answer, I'll be here to answer any questions you might have, and the applicants are in the audience as well.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Any questions for Mr. Lewis? All right, Mr. Roundtree, anything you'd like to add to the application? All right. At this time, we'll conduct a public hearing. Anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application, if you would please come forward. Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for further discussion or motions. Again, we have two components to this particular application.
I guess I want to, get some clarification if I can. On the first, I'm looking on the plat here, the first section where the 2.5 feet requested, I guess that's variance number 1, looks to be from the driveway to the property line, maybe a planting yard? That's correct? Okay. So we're, instead of where it says between access drives and adjacent property, is that more a 2.5 foot variance of the planting yard?
Say that one more time.
Well, if I'm looking at it correctly, I see the 7.5 feet here provided, which looks to be the rear entrance, right off the rear entrance. And that's for that distance measuring a planting yard? Or is that from the, I see the 10 on to the right there is where the 10 feet looks to be the
Well, the
property line to the
planting yard
street.
will be in that area, yes. But you're required to have so much distance from property line to an access drive.
It looks like it's all on the same side of the road.
Yes, so you have required 10 feet at one point, and then 15 feet's required just a few feet down on the same side of the property.
Well, one pertains to the smaller tract where the restaurant's going, and the other pertains to the larger tract, which is over 1.5 acres. And the restaurant site is under a certain size, under 1.5 acres.
So the property's being subdivided?
It will be, yeah.
And so the property that the restaurant is going onto is the property which the 7.5 foot variance is requested. And the remaining property is the
Larger
property that the 5 foot variance is requested. Okay. So they're asking for they're making a request for both sides of one property line for 2 pieces of property.
Right.
Okay.
Gotcha, okay. Makes sense.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking. I had the same, again.
It's like it's measured in
had the
2
same
different
question.
places, but the same description, so that's what threw me, but I'm okay.
Yeah, good point. All right, we should probably first consider the variance request number 1, the 2.5 feet from the required 10 feet between access drives and adjacent property.
I'll make a motion that we approve the 2.5 feet variance from the required 10 feet.
Second.
All right, motion and second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, now variance number 2 is the 5 foot variance from the required 15 feet between access drives and adjacent property.
I move to approve that 5 foot variance.
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that application has been approved in its entirety. Next, we have application Z15033 by Mr. Sumner Bolden for the Wagon Wheel Tavern. He's requesting a 7-foot variance from the City of Murfreesboro zoning ordinance, which requires a minimum 20-foot rear yard setback. And this is for property in a commercial highway zone located at 534 Southeast Broad Street. Mr. Lewis.
Yes, sir. I had it a minute ago. Okay. This property is located on the west side of Southeast Broad Street, just north of the Mercury Boulevard intersection. Back in 2011, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers restructured the stream at the rear of the property that runs to the Discovery Center. And this project virtually rendered the rear of the property useless for completing the applicant's proposed parking lot addition, which he began planning for in 1999. And I think that site plan is on the table before you. The applicant is now proposing to add an outside cooler behind the building, attached to the building, in order to better service customers. And he is requesting a 7-foot variance from the chart, the minimum lot requirements, the minimum yard requirements, and land intensity ratios from the zoning ordinance, which requires a minimum 20-foot yard rear setback in a commercial highway zone, CH zone. Also included in your agenda package are photos of the property in 2011 and 2014 to compare the difference between the property then and property now. In his letter to the board, the applicant states that the practical difficulties are associated with the narrowness, shallowness, or shape and topography of the land, which none of was his undertaking. The restructuring of the stream reduced the applicant's property and created an inadequate setback at the rear of the property. A copy of an earlier site plan, a drawing of the building which proposed the cooler and photographs of the property during the Corps of Engineers project and after the project are included in your agenda package for review. The applicant is in the audience, and Mr. Ives, I think, is a little familiar with this project also, and I'll be able to answer any questions you might have.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Any questions for Mr. Lewis? All right. Mr. Bolden, anything you'd like to add to the application? See him? See him anywhere?
My name is Lloyd Chisholm. Mr. Bolton's just the attorney that doing the paperwork for me.
Okay.
So forth. I'm just asking to be able to do this.
I tell you what, Mr. Chisholm, if you would, yeah, come up to the podium here.
I'm just asking for the variance on this due to the setbacks with the Corps of Engineer, which is out of my control on that. But the purpose of putting this cooler in is to be able to have better service for my customers, be able to store produce and stuff like that for the kitchen and so forth that I just put in there, and also as well as some beer to keep it cold and also.
All right. Any? I'm sorry. Tell me your name again.
Lloyd Chisholm.
Chisholm, yes, sir. Okay. Any questions for Mr. Chisholm? All right. Thank you, sir. If there are no other questions in for Mr. Lewis, we'll go ahead and conduct a public hearing. Anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application, if you would please come forward. And seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for further discussion or motion.
This property is near the Discovery Center that's on.
If there's no further discussion, I'll make a motion to approve the variance, subject to any staff comments.
Second.
All right, have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, Mr. Chisholm, that application has been approved. All right. We'll now consider application Z15034 by Mr. Steve Steele of Huddleston Steel, representing Slick Pig Restaurant, and he's requesting a 23-foot variance from the City of Murfreesboro zoning ordinance, which requires a minimum 42-foot front yard setback in a commercial highway zone, and this is for property located at 1920 East Main Street. All right, Mr. Lewis.
Yes, Chairman Rogers. This property is located on the south side of East Main Street, midway between Raglan Court and Lassiter Drive. It's shown on the monitor. The applicant is requesting a 23-foot variance from the zoning ordinance, which requires a minimum 42 front yard setback in a CH zone. The request is based upon an expansion of the restaurant towards the side property line to the west, as well as toward the front property line adjacent to the right-of-way of East Main Street. The applicant's business has grown to the point where there's a need for a waiting room or a waiting area for his customers to be seated and for to-go customers. The existing restaurant meets the front setback of 42 feet currently, and currently there are 8 parking spaces utilizing the front area of the building that have to back up onto East Main Street in order to leave. that's something that's not permitted in according to the current zoning ordinance, which with the development of the property. If the proposed expansion is going to be successful, the front parking between East Main Street and the building will be removed, and it'll be replaced by the addition as well as the landscaping along East Main Street, which will provide a softer, greener front building facade. A new parking lot was recently constructed behind the building that allows for the removal of the parking in front of the building. Included in your agenda materials is the site plan of the proposal, along with the floor plan of the restaurant and front building elevations of the addition. The site plan also includes landscaping being proposed for the front of the property. And I reviewed this with the city traffic engineer, Mr. Balachandra, and he was requesting to have a more defined entrance at the access point of East Main Street by adding concrete curbing at that point. This will also discourage parking on the shoulder of East Main Street in front of the restaurant. The applicant, Mr. Steele, is in the audience in order to answer any questions, and I'll be available as well.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Any questions for Mr. Lewis? All right. Mr. Steele, anything you'd like to add to the application?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Steve Steele with Huddleston Steele. I am here today with Mr. John Robinson, the owner of the Slick Pig Barbecue, and Mr. Dan Decker, who will be his contractor if this moves forward. Mr. Lewis pretty well explained what we want to do. I might mention just a couple of things. One, you might ask, why are we doing this out the front of the building, into the front setback? Well, the answer, I guess, could be kind of obvious. It's because it's the front of the building. That's the entry point to the Slick Pig Barbecue, and that is where Mr. Robinson has a problem today. I can attest from personal experience, there's really not a good spot to wait. What this proposal will allow is the addition of a front porch area where people can sit and wait outside if they're waiting for a carry-out order, or there will be an interior waiting room there at the front of the store. So that's why that's being added out the front. And I guess secondly, if we do that, then we have to remove the parking, and I think that's going to be a much better situation overall for the traveling public and the other public in that area. If you have any other questions, I'll be glad to address them right now or at a future point.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Steele. Are there any questions for Mr. Steele?
Now, where did you say the parking was going to be now that you're using this space for your expansion?
That parking that is on the front of the building goes back to when this building was a grocery store, I think the East Main Market. Mm-hmm. And back in those days, it was quite common, pretty regular, that parking just came right off the street. And when you left, you backed out into the street and went on your way. Of course, today, with today's standards, we don't like that because we have much more traffic. People are driving faster, and we don't want them to back in and out. So if we add the entry, it will give the owner the opportunity to take all the pavement out in front, and he will landscape that so he'll have a green front yard instead of an asphalt front yard.
Now, where will the parking be? You
The
park
parking
in the back?
will be in the back.
Okay, that's what I was asking.
This has kind of evolved over time. I guess Mr. Robinson's first issue was he didn't feel like he had enough parking. Mm-hmm. So we prepared a site plan to add parking in the rear, and he had some things he had to do to make that happen, but he did make that happen. So there's a brand new parking lot in the back, which will help with the increased seating capacity that will also result from them reorganizing the storefront, if you will.
Very good. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
So, Steve, there'll still be parking then on the side of the side of the building, I guess the east side of the building, and then the parking lot in the back.
Yes, sir,
right?
there would be, but they would all enter from an entry point off of East Main, which I know Mr. Lewis mentioned Mr. Balachandran wanted us to do something to define that. Our next step, if we are granted this variance, would be to come back through planning with a site plan, and we'll show that work.
Okay.
But that limits the potential conflicts to one point, which is much better for the traveling public.
There's a plot plan that kind of defines it a little
Yes, sir,
bit
it does.
as far as, looks like there's going to be a little bit of lawn and some bushes and the curbing along East Main, I think.
Our plan is to remove any pavement that's not required for the operation of East Main in the front, other than the access to the parking lot. Today, that's all paved where people pulled up to the old grocery store years ago.
You're coming off the front a little farther than you are now. How does that, if it was as built, compare with the other structures along East Main as far as setbacks go?
You know, I honestly don't know. I don't know if Mr. Lewis would have any type of aerial photograph or a...
Pull that up on the monitor. Let me enlarge that a little bit. The area that's highlighted with the green line, that's the 1920 where we're talking about. And if I can, you can see the alignment of the buildings there, not in a straight line.
Looks
but,
like 1902 and 1912 are closer to that, the proposed building. Looking at it.
Mm-hmm. 1912.
Right. Closer to there.
I can speak from personal experience where trying to back out of here, I backed out one day, and there's a pole right at the whatever corner, the northwest corner of this property, and caused about $2,200 worth of damage.
Did you have a good insurance agent?
Yeah, I had a good insurance agent, but he didn't want to file a claim. But anyway, I think this definitely would be a positive for people trying to get in and out of there.
Definitely.
Will there be anything to define the Slick Pig property from the property immediately to the east?
Well, no, sir, because they have an agreement. They actually use that for joint access and joint parking. So I don't know that we would find anything there. We could do it on the west side where our landscape area would be. We would add a curb to make sure somebody didn't pull off into the grass.
Right. All right. Any other questions from Mr. Steele?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And at this time, we'll conduct a public hearing. Anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application, if you would, please come forward. And seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for further discussion or motion.
No further questions. I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. There was one staff comment about the curbing, I believe.
Uh-huh.
Please include the comments.
Motion to approve subject to staff comments. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that application has been approved. Thank you. All right, next we'll consider some special use permit requests. First one there is application Z15035 by Ms. Brenda Rohr for Surefire Fireworks, requesting a special use permit in order to operate a fireworks retail site in a commercial highway zone located at 231 through 239 Veterans Parkway. Mr. Lewis.
Yes, Chairman Rogers. This property is located on the south side of Veterans Parkway, west of South Church Street, as noted on the monitor. The property is currently developed with an office condominium development called Barfield Square, and the applicant wishes to locate a seasonal fireworks tent on the parking lot in front of the development. The applicant has submitted a letter describing her request and addressing the standards for temporary vendors as well as the site plan of the property and permission of the property owner allowing the use of the property as proposed. It's been approved, this site has been approved for a fireworks retailer from 2011 through 2014. And the applicant is aware of all of the regulations that we have and is willing to abide by them. And she's in the attendance at the in the audience for the meeting, and I'll be able to answer her questions for you as well.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Any questions for Mr. Lewis? All right. Ms. Rahr, anything you'd like to add to the application? All right. At this time, we'll conduct a public hearing. Anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application, if you would please come forward. And seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed. Open the floor for further discussion or motion.
There's no further discussion. I'll make a motion to approve the request, including all 7 conditions requested by the staff.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that application has been approved. And we will move on to our next application. It is Z15036 by James and Lori Gibson for Gibson Fireworks. They too are requesting a special use permit in order to operate a fireworks retail site in a commercial local zone. And this is for property located at 3216 Memorial Boulevard. Mr. Lewis.
Yes, Chairman Rogers. This property is located on the east side of Memorial Boulevard, north of Cedarview Drive. The subject property was previously developed with a motel, which burned down several years ago. The applicant wishes to locate a seasonal fireworks tent on the parking lot of the property. The applicant has submitted a letter describing their request and addressing the standards of temporary vendors, as well as a site plan of the property, permission letter from the property owner allowing the use of the property as proposed. The site's been approved for a seasonal fireworks retailer from 2009 through 2013. And the applicant is aware of all the regulations that the city requires for temporary vendors and is willing to abide by them. I'll be able to answer any questions you may have, and the applicant is in the audience as well.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Any questions for Mr. Lewis? All right. Mr. Gibson or Ms. Gibson, anything you all would like to add to the application? All right. At this time, we'll conduct a public hearing. Anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application, if you would come forward. And seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed. Open the floor for further discussion or motion.
If no further questions, I'll make a motion to approve the application with the 8 requirements set by the staff's conditions.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Mr. Gibson, that application has been approved. Now we'll consider application Z15037 by Mr. Jake Lloyd for Mid-America Distributors. He too is requesting a special use permit in order to operate a seasonal fireworks site in a commercial highway zone, and this is for property located at 2870 Old Fort Parkway. Mr. Lewis.
Yes, Chairman Rogers. This property is located on the north side of Old Fort Parkway, between Gresham Lane and Agra Park Drive. He is requesting a special use permit in order to operate a temporary outdoor vending establishment as a seasonal fireworks retailer. He submitted a letter describing his request and addressing the standards for temporary vending, as well as a site plan of the property and a permission letter from the property owner allowing the use of the property as proposed. This site has never been used as a fireworks tent location before, and the applicant is aware of all the regulations that the city requires of him. There's a couple of conditions in addition to the standard conditions that we usually typically put on temporary fireworks vendors. And this one is type 3 barricades must be placed as shown on the aerial photograph. And that's to prevent vehicles from entering the site and crashing into the tent with the fireworks in it, and as well as from leaving the permanent building there, Kelton's, I think, is the name of the store, and accidentally backing into the fireworks tent. In addition, Old Fort Parkway has got a wide shoulder, and we discussed with the traffic engineer that if there's cars or vehicles stopping along Old Fort Parkway and trying to scoot in and get some fireworks and then scoot back out real quick, we'd like to monitor that and be able to have the ability to put traffic cones along there to prohibit that. But Mr. Lloyd is in the audience and answer any questions you might have, and I'll be able to answer them as well.
All right. Any questions for Mr. Lewis? Mr. Lloyd, anything you'd like to add to the application? All right. All right. All right. We like easy. At this time, we'll conduct a public hearing. Anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application? Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed. Open the floor for further discussion or motion.
I'll make a motion we approve, subject to all staff comments.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Mr. Lloyd is going to stay with us here for another application. It is Z15038. Again, he's requesting a special use permit in order to operate a seasonal fireworks site in a commercial highway zone, but this one is located at 1815 through 1849 Memorial Boulevard. Mr. Lewis.
Yes, Chairman Rogers. This property is located on the west side of Memorial Boulevard, midway between MTCS Road and Heritage Park Drive. The applicant is requesting a special use permit in order to operate a temporary outdoor vending establishment as a seasonal fireworks retailer. He submitted a letter describing his request and addressing the standards for temporary vending, as well as a site plan of the property and a permission letter from the property owner allowing the use of the property as proposed. This lot has also never been used as a temporary vending site for fireworks tents, and the same conditions apply. Mr. Balachandra and I looked at this site. If you can notice on the monitor, the entrance to this property is such that with the tent located where it is, we're going to make sure that circulation is allowed behind the long building to the rear of the tent. There's vehicles circulating the building, so we want to make sure that it's still being able to circulate with vehicular traffic. And in addition to pulling off Memorial Boulevard, we would like to have the ability to put in type 3 barricades in front of the tent that faces Memorial Boulevard. This is a safety precaution for the vehicles and the people in the tent as well. And with those conditions, I'll, like I say, Mr. Lloyd's in the audience to answer any questions. I'll be available as well.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Any questions for Mr. Lewis? All right, Mr. Lloyd, anything you want to add to this one? All quiet today. All right. At this time, we'll conduct a public hearing. Anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application, if you would come forward. And seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for further discussion or motion.
If there's no further discussion, I'll make a motion to approve the application, subject to the staff comments.
I'll second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Mr. Lloyd, those applications have been approved. Thank you. Yes, sir. We'll see you next year. All right. The next, our last application is Z15039 by Ms. Kathy Biter for B&B Fireworks. She's requesting a special use permit in order to operate a seasonal fireworks site in a commercial highway zone. And this is her property located on the southeast corner of South Church Street and Southeast Broad Street. Mr. Lewis.
Yes, Chairman Rogers. Our final applicant is, the property is located at the southeast corner of Southeast Broad Street and South Church Street. It's at the corner, and it's west of McDonald's Restaurant and north of the former Kentucky Fried Chicken. The property was developed with a gas station quite a long time ago, but has been vacant for some time. The applicant wishes to locate a seasonal fireworks tent on the site. She submitted a letter describing her request and addressing the standards for temporary vending, as well as a site plan of the property and a permission letter from the property owner allowing the use of the property as proposed. The site's been used for a fireworks tent from 1997 through 2014, and the applicant is aware that there's a large drainage structure on the property that has recently come under study by the city engineering department, and as a result of a report that was submitted to them, vehicular traffic is no longer going to be allowed to cross over this property in its entirety. So after working with the applicant, talking to Mr. Balachandra and the engineering department, there is a site plan. There's several drawings in your agenda package, and I'd like to pull one of these up that shows this one right here. This is a rough drawing, but it showed the property that's highlighted, the lines that are highlighted in yellow shows the detail of the easement, and that's the nature of what we had a big discussion about. As long as the applicant is aware that no vehicular traffic can cross this easement, and it's going to be barricaded with type 3 barriers, traffic can come in on South Church Street and Southeast Broad Street, but must stop at these barriers. We're going to provide a pedestrian access through this easement, so pedestrians can walk from Southeast Broad Street to the tent, which is going to be located on the south side of the easement, and that'll allow for the lot to be used for the fireworks tent. The city currently has this project, or this property, in its capital improvements budget to be fixed. I'm not sure how they're going to do that, but that's what engineers do. But they're going to fix this problem. But they are happy with the way Mr. Balachandra proposed this property to be used, and it'll be able to be used in a manner that will be safe for the vehicular traffic and the motoring public, as well as pedestrians. And in the conditions, I want to just state that number 10, the two northernmost ramps on the South Church Street, they must be barricaded, which I think has been done in the past. The only access from South Church Street will be the southernmost access drive, which is a driveway that's shared with the McDonald's. And number 7, which is a licensed surveyor must assist the tent company with the placement of the tent. The licensed surveyor must provide written verification that the tent has been placed as shown on the site plan, and that no encroachment of any part of the tent into any public utility or drainage easements, and the type 3 barricades and channelization drums are not encroaching into the easement. Surveyor must also certify the pedestrian walkway is 5 feet wide. With that, I'll be able to answer any questions you might have, and the applicant is in the audience as well.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Any questions for Mr. Lewis?
So will there only be parking on the South Church Street side, or will there be any parking on the Southeast Broad Street side in front of this barricade?
There'll be parking on both sides.
On both sides?
Right.
Okay.
They just can't go beyond
Not
the
within
barricades.
the barricade.
Right.
And then there's that walkway
Right.
for people who've parked on the
Right.
Broad Street. Okay.
That would allow access from both sides, both streets.
Okay.
All right. Ms. Bonner, anything you'd like to add to the application?
Alongside that, we have ordered the 3 barricades, and we have 15 barrels, plus a caution tape, and we'll do like we've done every year and make sure, and Huddleston and Steele have been hired to be there when the tent, National Tent Awning puts our tent up. I'd like a consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. At this time, we'll conduct a public hearing. Anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application, if you would, please come forward. And seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed. Open the floor for further discussions or motion.
there's no further discussion, I move to approve the application with the conditions set by the staff.
I'll second.
All right, have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, your application's been approved. Thank you. All right, staff reports and other business.
I don't have anything else.
All right, we have approved probably 15 to 20 fireworks stands. 18. Okay.
Matthew and I are going to go out and do some inspections after the next BZA meeting, which will be the following Thursday and Friday, I guess,
Okay.
in June. That'll get the applicants up and running. I think is when they can begin selling.
All right, keep you busy. Any other business? We're adjourned.